My name is Adrian Cole, and I'm about to tell you a story about betrayal, stolen credit, and the kind of revenge you only get one shot at. The man I trusted turned my work into his empire, and I let him think I'd stay quiet. But when I finally walked into his executive office, the silence I carried with me was heavier than any words. What happened next changed both our lives forever. Stick with me, this is not a story you'll want to miss. But first, take a quick second to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Every message you leave fuels me to bring you more true-to-life stories that reveal the cost of lies and the power of proof. I stepped inside, holding a small crate in one arm and a tan legal folder tucked tight in the other. I didn't bother with greetings. The crate hit the floor beside the chair, the folder slid across the desk, and then I just stared straight at him. 17 years of building the backbone of Hale Global Systems, designing every system that carried their success, and that morning, I was finished. Victor Hale leaned back in his chair, a curling grin across his face like I'd handed him a birthday card. He flipped the folder open, chuckled like it was a joke, and muttered, "You can't be serious." Then he leaned forward, elbows on the desk, voice full of mock advice. "You're 47, Adrian. This field eats men alive after 44. You really think you're starting over now?" He had done this for years, standing on my shoulders, parading my work at industry events, strutting around with a presentation remote like he understood any of it. Every slide he showed the world was powered by my logic, my models, my code, and every cheer from the crowd only fed his ego. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even blink. "I've got copies of everything," I told him. My tone was firm, my words steady. Every sign, wisdom, every test, every build, clean backups, dated, recorded, and proof you never touched a single line. That grin faltered. "Excuse me?" he asked, the confidence slipping. "You heard me," I said. "You've lived off my work for 11 years. I have the emails, the team link messages, the commit logs, the internal notes, all of it. You're just noise with a loud microphone, Victor. Nothing more." He shoved the folder aside like it had burned him. "You're bluffing." I picked it back up, tucked it under my arm, and locked eyes with him. "Go ahead and test me. By the time I leave this office, I'll already be worth more than you." His jaw tightened. This time, there was no comeback. Just silence. I grabbed the crate and walked toward the door. The click behind me felt final. I didn't even pause. I didn't want his approval. I didn't need it. The truth was, I had made my move long before this day. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, engine off, staring at the dashboard. My hands trembled, but not with fear. It was anger held in check, sharpened over months. That day wasn't the start, it was the explosion. The fuse had been lit 10 months earlier. It happened at the Ironwood Lake Retreat, the annual gathering where executives clinked glasses and praised themselves for work they didn't lift a finger to create. I wasn't supposed to be in the meeting hall that afternoon, but I ducked in to grab my charger. That's when I froze. Victor stood at the front, pointer in hand, acting like a prom king in a crown he didn't earn. The real breakthrough, he boasted, was our adaptive load balancing framework. That's what lets us manage seasonal spikes across hubs. He described my system, word for word, the same one I had bled over for 10 months, breaking and rebuilding until it held. He didn't even understand how it worked. I'd had to sketch out diagrams just to explain it to him once. I slipped out unnoticed, heart pounding. That night I opened a private archive on my home server, locked under a random string of characters. Into it went everything. Dashboard screenshots tagged with my handle, commit histories with my initials, voice memos recorded during late-night builds, drafts, test results, every shred of evidence showing it was mine. And from then on, I documented everything. Every time he asked me to explain something one more time, I wrote it down. Every time he claimed my work in public, I built a timeline. I knew it was obsessive, but I wasn't going to fade into the background while he collected praise for ideas he couldn't even spell right. Weeks later, I started digging through HR policies. Buried deep in the paperwork was a clause about intellectual property. Anything built off hours on personal gear could be claimed as independent research. That was my lifeline. I drafted a subtle update to the policy under independent innovation, wrote it clean, no red flags, just enough to carve out protection. Then I handed it to Victor one afternoon, saying it was a formality for vendor compliance. He didn't bother reading, just signed it and moved on. That's when I knew. He never saw me as a threat, just another background tech guy, and that blind arrogance was going to be his downfall. Victor Hale didn't even glance at the update I slipped in front of him, just signed and moved on. That was all I needed. In his eyes, I was a harmless background worker, a glorified technician who kept the lights on but never mattered. What he didn't see was the knife I had just placed behind his back. 2 days later, I encrypted my evidence, spread copies across 2 secure clouds, and stashed a physical drive inside a locked case at home. I wasn't rushing to use it. I wanted it airtight, bulletproof. From then on, whenever Victor strutted into a meeting, puffin', G up his chest about his strategy, I stayed quiet. I just documented, patient, watching him bury himself deeper every single day. By the time the archive was sealed, I knew where this story was headed. I just didn't know how quickly it would unravel. It hit faster than I thought. One Friday in mid-June, I was stuck at a tech expo in Riverbend, standing at Hale Global Systems' booth like a prop while Victor spewed buzzwords to investors. I slipped away to breathe, and that's when it happened. A woman stopped me, arms folded, eyes sharp. "You're Adrian Cole, aren't you?" she asked. "I've been trying to figure out who actually builds the systems your company brags about." Her name was Tasha Keene, head of development at Solara Biotech, our fiercest rival. She wasn't smiling, but there was a spark in her stare. "I built most of it," I admitted. "Most?" she shot back. "Try 98%. Victor just slaps his name on top." That finally drew a grin from her. We ended up talking for 20 minutes beside a coffee cart. No buzzwords, no fake polish, just raw tech. I mentioned quirks in the framework only the true architect would know. She didn't press me for files. She didn't need to. A week later, she emailed, said she'd be passing through Fairhaven and asked if I wanted to grab coffee. We met at a roadside diner off Route 47. No laptops, no suits, no stage, just 2 people speaking the same language at last. I never shared client names or leaked code, but the way I broke down system logic, infrastructure flows, and problem-solving tricks left no doubt. By the end, she leaned forward and said, "If you want to build something that matters, call me." That night, I pulled out my contracts and combed through every line. No non-compete, no enforceable IP clause. Especially not after the innovation policy Victor had signed blindly. 3 days later, a lawyer confirmed it. I was in the clear. So, I prepared. I pulled backups offline, scrubbed metadata, time-stamped every log. I sorted which models had been built on my own time, with my own gear. I even had Team Link messages saved, ones where Victor begged for presentation notes minutes before going live. My safety net was set. 2 months later, Tasha called again. This time she didn't ask, she offered. CTO position, full creative control, your own team, real ownership. I didn't hesitate. I said yes. But I didn't announce it. I showed up at work as usual, even helped Victor prep for a webinar while I quietly arranged contracts, logistics, and legal onboarding with Solara. By night, I built my new life. By day, I played the invisible loyalist. Then the morning came. I walked back into that executive office with the same letter you already heard about, laid it on the desk, told him where I was going. "Solara?" His eyes widened. "You're joining them?" "Correct." "You can't do that. You must have signed an NDA, some kind of non-compete." I shook my head. "Check your records. You refused to use contracts because you didn't want to scare off your talent. Remember?" His face froze. "I was never your star," I told him. "I was your foundation." The color drained from his cheeks. He knew what had just walked out the door, the brain of his company. I didn't wait for handshakes or speeches. No champagne, no online announcement. I drove straight to Solara's Fairhaven office, picked up my new badge, and stepped into a world with real leadership, 14 engineers, 2 data scientists, a project lead, a UX specialist, people who actually listened. I wasn't patching holes anymore. I was building. Meanwhile, Victor kept pretending. That same day, he posted a smug selfie on WorkNet, captioned with something about strong leaders never panic. 5 days later, he reposted a Business Insight Journal article about resilience. Dr. Opping quotes from Richard Hale like he was auditioning for Vision Talk. It was pitiful, and by the second week, the cracks were already showing. The first cracks appeared small: typos in system logs, minor routing delays, packages bouncing to the wrong hubs for no clear reason. At first, it looked like noise, but then the questions began. On Victor Hale's WorkNet posts, people started commenting things like, "How does your team manage throttling across regional centers? What's your real-time failover strategy? Is the adaptive model rule-based or generative?" He ignored them all. Not once did he reply, just kept throwing out hollow quotes. Vision over visibility. Strength comes in silence. Nonsense that sounded like leadership only if you didn't know the ground truth. By week 5, the silence was too loud to hide. Someone from inside Hale Global Systems messaged me directly. Their senior dev had resigned 2 days after I left, and another engineer was fumbling with my dispatcher module, unable to even find an entry point. "Did you leave documentation?" they asked. I hadn't. Not to spite them, but because Victor never once requested it. He assumed you could just swap a body into the machine and watch it run. But the code wasn't plug and play. It was layered with hyper-specific logic, customer rhythms, vendor quirks, lane histories, weather anomalies. You had to live in that system to understand it. By week 6, clients noticed, and they weren't small ones. A Fortune 100 customer filed a formal complaint, missed thresholds, failing adjustments, broken auto routes. Another accused them of inaccurate tracking windows. Support tried to wave it off as a minor recalibration, but no one bought it. That same day, Victor posted a picture of a mountain peak captioned, "Leadership means staying calm while the wind howls." I nearly laughed out loud. Meanwhile, at Solara Biotech, we were moving like a machine. My new team crushed our first sprint. We pushed a core update that boosted last-mile routing efficiency by 11%. 11? For the first time in years, I wasn't patching fires or ghostwriting slides for someone else's ego. I was building. My new upper-floor office wasn't just glass and the skyline. It was clear. The following week, I heard Victor tried rallying the troops with an all-hands tech session. Half the staff skipped. The half that showed asked questions he couldn't answer. One person flat out said, "Can we get Adrian's version of the workflow model?" He ended the meeting early. Later, an engineer wrote to me privately, not to beg for help, but to say thank you. Watching me walk away had given them the courage to do the same. Victor had spent 11 years stepping on people like me, convinced we were trapped. But it turned out he was the one trapped. Without us, he was nothing. Then came the public humiliation. Clips from a panel discussion I had joined began circulating. Someone tagged CorePath Tech, calling it the clearest logistics breakdown they'd seen in years. An intern even turned Victor's awkward reaction shots into memes that spread through our TeamLink channel in minutes. By Tuesday, I found myself 5 rows from the stage at the International Systems Summit. The grand hall was packed, 2,000 executives, engineers, researchers. And who was opening the keynote? Victor. His name lit up the giant screens. CEO, Hale Global Systems, revolutionizing adaptive logistics. He strolled out in a sharp suit, confidence painted on like makeup. His intro sounded rehearsed, redefining efficiency, leveraging data, pushing boundaries. It was generic enough he could have been any Inspire X speaker. But then came the questions. Front row. Can you walk us through the logic behind real-time predictive routing? Victor smiled thinly. That's part of our proprietary system, but broadly, it adapts dynamically to congestion signals. Second row. Which statistical models are you using for uncertainty handling? Bayesian inference? Monte Carlo? He blinked. It's a hybrid. A little of everything. We believe in flexibility. Seats shifted. Murmurs grew. Then a woman with a Crestview badge spoke up. I reviewed your white paper. One of the graphs you showed contains weight distributions that can't exist mathematically. The load balance doesn't converge. Victor chuckled nervously. Well, impossible depends on perspective. The room erupted in whispers. Someone behind me muttered, "He's dodging." Another hissed, "He's finished." And then it happened. From the center aisle, Tasha Keene rose to her feet, her voice cut sharp and clear. "Actually," she said, "our CTO can explain the models Mr. Hale is referencing." Heads snapped toward me. She gestured. The spotlight shifted. Victor's face drained of color like he'd seen a ghost. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket, and walked down the aisle. Every eye followed. I didn't glance at him once. I stepped onto the stage, took the mic, and said, "Let's clear something up." Dead silence. The models in question rely on a reinforcement learning core wrapped inside a Markov decision process. The weight distributions converge once you factor in temporal variance and root history, assuming, of course, the system is built to learn from both. For a second, the hall stayed frozen. Then heads began nodding. And then, clapping. I kept speaking, steady and measured. The optimization layer separates into 3 channels: reactive, predictive, and adaptive. Most systems fail because they blur those boundaries. Ours isolates them and then coordinates across the stack. That's how you prevent the breakdowns you're seeing at Hale Global Systems, right? Now, a ripple of laughter rolled through the hall. Victor Hale stood frozen on the side of the stage, eyes darting, his posture crumbling as if the spotlight itself weighed 100 pounds. I didn't overplay it. No grandstanding. Just enough truth to make clear who built the foundation, and who pretended to. The moderator thanked me. Panelists nodded. Someone shouted from the audience, "Hire this man." I handed back the mic and walked off stage without looking his way. In that room of 2,000 experts, his reputation had already collapsed. The second I stepped behind the curtain, the real storm hit. Microphones, lights, phones shoved in my face. I hadn't even cleared the walkway when a reporter barked, "Why was Victor Hale presenting your work for over a decade?" I didn't flinch, just met her eyes and said, "Ask him." One sentence was all I gave, and it was enough. Victor tried slipping out a side exit, but cameras caught him. "Is it true you took credit for Adrian Cole's work? Were you directly involved in development?" He didn't deny it outright, just muttered about collaboration, about shared effort. Weak. Within an hour, the hashtag was trending. #Hale exposed. By the time I got back to our Solara table, my phone buzzed nonstop. Tasha handed me a bottle of water. "You just lit a fire," she said. 2 hours later, Solara's media team released a statement. Full confirmation that I was the original architect behind every logistics framework Brightload had staked its reputation on. Patents, contributions, dates, and all public records. I didn't draft it. I didn't need to. Just approved it. The press moved fast. Tech blogs, trade magazines, even mainstream outlets ran the headline. CTO breaks silence. Brightload's hidden brain steps forward. Victor tried hiding. No interviews, no comments. But it was too late. His investors began asking brutal questions. Why had the so-called CTO never written code? Why were engineers bailing? Why was all working IP tied to a man who'd quit weeks earlier? He had no answers. By Friday evening, 6:15 p.m., the classic time for burying bad news, the announcement dropped. Victor Hale stepping down as CEO of Hale Global Systems, effective immediately. No farewell, no tribute, just a quiet execution. My phone lit up again. Old colleagues, strangers, engineers across the country. Most sent the same 2 words. "He's done." I didn't gloat. No memes, no victory lap. I simply forwarded the press release to my team with a note. Proof speaks louder. Then I shut the laptop and went home. Monday brought the counterattack. Hale's lawyers filed challenges on the adaptive routing patents, claiming joint ownership under corporate direction. I expected it. If I were them, I would have tried the same move. But their case collapsed on impact. My documentation was airtight. Time-stamped builds, mirrored backups, commits stamped with my ID, late-night code pushes on my own equipment, and the kicker, contracts signed with Victor's own signature, protecting independent research. Solara's legal team went straight for the throat, cease and desist notices, patent reassignment requests, public filings. Their only option was to settle. 8 technologies, 7 figures paid in installments, and next to each patent, Adrian Cole, sole inventor. Victor could have dragged it out, but he didn't. Maybe he knew the end was inevitable. Within weeks, Hale Global bled out. Contracts dissolved, vendors walked, talent fled. One headline nailed it: Bright Load, a case study in stolen innovation. Their stock cratered by quarter's end. I didn't toast, didn't slow down. At Solara, we launched our beta platform, clean metrics, high performance, clients lining up. The future was unfolding right under our hands. Then one morning I walked into my upper floor office and froze. A single sheet of paper lay folded on my desk, no envelope, no stamp. Blue ink, written by hand. I stood in your light and told myself I earned it. You were always the builder. I only borrowed your fire. No signature. But I didn't need one. The handwriting was his. I sat with it for a minute. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. Just silence. I stared at that note for a long moment, but the words didn't change anything. They were too late to carry weight. I slid the page into a drawer and went back to my desk. Work wasn't stopping for ghosts. 6 months later, I stood backstage at the very same International Systems Summit where Victor Hale had unraveled. Only this time, the announcer introduced me with no borrowed titles, no borrowed credit. Adrian Cole, the architect behind the industry's most advanced freight optimization platform. I didn't wave, didn't grin. I just walked into the lights and took the mic. The hall was full again, 2,000 faces. Same stage, same event, but a completely different story. The first slide glowed behind me. No branding, no slogans, just 4 words. Real solutions for real systems. I walked them through what we had built at Solara Biotech. Line by line, feature by feature. Adaptive layers, correction loops, routing logic tested against real-world failures. Graphs showing error drops. Charts proving efficiency gains. Not a single buzzword. Not one empty phrase. Every word I spoke came from nights I spent hunched over code while Victor played executive. From weekends I poured into debugging loops he couldn't spell. From the 100 times I almost quit, but refused. The audience was still as stone. No shuffling, no coughs, just locked on. And when I closed on the last line of code, the engine that drove it all, I let silence hang for a breath. Then the applause came. Not polite clapping. A surge. People on their feet. A full standing ovation. It hit me harder than I expected. Not because of the sound, but because this time it was mine. No one beside me is stealing credit. No one is twisting the truth into a leadership slogan. I stepped off stage, heart racing, not from nerves, but from finally being recognized. Tasha waited in the wings. She didn't need to deliver a speech, just looked at me and said quietly, "You earned every bit of this." I nodded. That was enough. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just present. I was undeniable. And the best part? I never had to shout, never had to fake. I just built it. Then stepped aside and let the truth speak louder than anything else.